What do you believe today?
I don't know what you mean by that question.
What do you believe?
I believe...
Just throw it out there. What do you believe?
I believe that...
All right, so somebody's thinking of this right now. Do you believe in Jesus?
Yes.
Okay.
But what does that mean? I guess I should paraphrase it with, what does that mean? And do you believe in Jesus?
You're sounding kind of sus right now. Do you believe in Jesus?
I believe that Jesus Christ came to earth.
The Christians are going to be thinking right now, this girl's sus.
I do believe that Jesus Christ came to earth, died on the cross.
Why would people have a problem with that?
I don't think this is going to make much sense, but it's a somewhat emotional environment when you go to church, okay? I don't know, but I don't think people understand whenever I say that.
Wow. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Joe Biden.
He needs hope.
How do you feel about emotional men? In today's interview, I want to interview a friend of mine, Susanna Young. I wanted to get her life story, her testimony. I want to see what she thinks about modern day Christianity in America, modern day dating in America. I want to get her theology, her philosophy of life, how her views have changed from her childhood to her adult years. And taking a different approach today. And I'm glad to have my friend Susanna Young on. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing amazing, as usual. So, I want you to tell me what got you into getting onto YouTube.
For me, it was just another way to put out there what I enjoy talking about. I like to talk.
Yeah.
So it was an opportunity just to start talking and getting used to putting out there what I'm thinking and what things are important in my life at the time.
Right. So you, on your channel, you're talking about what, fitness, dating. Well, I see you do a little bit of red pill.
Right.
Type stuff.
So I do a little bit of red pill. I've started getting into that field, I guess. I don't even know what we would call it.
Yeah.
So I talk about a little bit of red pill stuff. That's been my latest craze. I like to discuss, I do personal training, so I talk about fitness, I talk about nutrition. Those are things that I'm very interested in. And I also like to talk about things that just make people kind of question what's going on in the world. Like, I do some things where I do reactions, I'll do reactions to different videos, and I'm like, so what's actually going on here? Just kind of thought-provoking, because to me that's interesting, because it makes me question what's going on and what I actually believe and think.
So let's make something clear. Susanna grew up as a PK kid, pastor's kid.
Yes.
And so this is why I think it would be interesting to talk about, I've checked out the red pill stuff, I've made reaction videos on it and stuff, but I'm not really interested in it. I mean, I like to just see what people are talking about and what they're about, and I know that's kind of what you do too. Mm-hmm. But so anyways, we'll get into that later.
Okay.
On your thoughts on those things as a PK kid. Now, can you tell me about your life story? I know that's oh yeah, tell me your life story, and then I'm just gonna sit here for the next 30 minutes and just let you talk. I know that you can go on. So let's start off from your childhood. What was life like growing up as a pastor's kid? Let's just start from the beginning. I want to get to know you, and then afterwards I want to extract other things in your brain, all right?
So I was born into a large family, and I grew up as a Baptist. So my dad is a Baptist pastor. He was more known as a missionary because he would travel to different locations. and he would preach at one place, be there for a year or two, and then move to another church that needed a pastor. When I came along, my dad had just been hired on at another church, so I was 3 months old, and my family moved to a place in the state of Arkansas, and we lived there for about 7 years. And after 7 years, and my youngest 3 siblings were born, my dad felt called to move again. And instead of moving to a church that was already made, already had the congregation, he wanted to start his own church. He said, "This is what I feel called to do, and I want to go to the state of Arizona. This is where we're going to live." And so he began on this journey of reaching out to other people in the... I'll have to backtrack. I need to put a little paraphrase here for a second.
Yeah.
The Baptist organization we were a part of, the church that we were a part of, there's thousands of them across the country. So we traveled to a lot of different churches asking for their support. My dad would explain his vision and what he's working towards. And he did really, it was incredible.
Right.
Everything I know about business now, I'm like, this was incredible marketing strategies. But how he would he understood how to explain the vision and help other people get on board and be like, wow, this is going to be incredible. And so we did that. During that time, he put me and all of my 7 older siblings into a singing group. We learned how to sing together, and that was a lot of fun. And we would sing, he would preach, and...
Like you were on the worship team type of thing, or?
Kind of, but
Okay.
It was more like we were basically like a little choir.
Wow.
We were just our own. We had 5 songs we would practice every day, and we would sing, and then my dad would preach, and we would switch it up sometimes. Sometimes
Right.
we'd sing one song, he would preach, and then back and forth. So we did that. We did that for, I want to say, almost 8 months, maybe more.
Uh-huh.
I remember it was the beginning of January 2002. That's when I became aware that we were going to start moving somewhere new. And I was only 7. So I started getting my voice started getting trained and everything at the age of 7. And we started going to different churches. And then we moved in August of 2002 to the state of Arizona. So during that time, though, towards the end, in July, we were in a car accident, and I was basically taken off the team because I ended up with a head injury. I was in the hospital during the last couple months of my dad traveling with the family to do... I was in the hospital. I don't even know if they continued going to the different churches at that time.
Yeah.
So I was in recovery for about...
Were you in a coma or something? Or?
I was unconscious. I ended up with amnesia. So I don't remember anything of what happened.
Yeah.
And I lost a lot of my childhood memories, forming new memories I struggled with as well. So learning after that, it was a challenge. School was very hard. So, and anyways.
So, let me stop you real quick. What memories, do you remember? Because you said that you got knocked out in this car accident, right?
Right.
At the age of 7?
At this point, I was 8.
At 8 years old. And then do you remember anything prior to that? Because,
I remember little things.
Yeah.
I remember some memories prior, but it wasn't... It's scattered, and sometimes I'll remember something, even now, I'll be like, oh, wow, I forgot that happened. Stuff like that.
It's interesting, because, I only have a few memories from under the age of 9. Or, no, under age 7 or so. So...
Right. which is pretty.
I wonder how much of our childhood that we can actually remember.
Well, what's cool is that from the age of 5 and under, because your brain goes through the phase of just dropping off whatever memories you don't really need.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to learn so much. I didn't really lose a lot of childhood memories.
Okay.
And then, but there were a lot of things like everybody else in the family remembers everything that led up to the car accident.
Wow.
I don't remember anything.
Do you remember the car accident?
No, not
the drive, not the accident.
I don't remember the drive. I don't remember getting in the car. The only thing I can remember from that day was I saw my brother, my baby brother. He was playing around with my baby sister, and they were sitting in the driver's seat of the van while we were packing the van because we were traveling across state.
So you were, in a coma.
They had to force me into a coma.
How does that happen?
I guess I shouldn't say force. It was more like they had to induce a coma. Yeah. Because I was what they told my parents. So when the accident happened, the car that my mom was driving, it was pulling onto the freeway. You know how lanes just merge together instead of having the space where you can pull over and you have an exit lane? So this one, the lanes merged together. And what I'm told is that my mom was pulling onto the ramp. She was driving a car, because at this point there's so many of us, we have to use 2 vehicles. So she's pulling onto the freeway. There is rain outside. You cannot see anything. So it's kind of dangerous to drive at this point anyways. But she's following my dad. And my dad's driving the van that has most of the rest. He has most of the family. But it's me and 3 of my siblings in the car with my mom. She pulls in to the freeway. The back bumper hits a semi-truck. And when that happens, the car hydroplanes across the freeway, hits the guardrail, goes back across the freeway, we land in a ditch. So what happened to me was my head hit the side of the car, and then it hit my brother's car seat. So the doctors were concerned I'd be blind, and they couldn't even check on me by the time they got me to the hospital because I was breaking the adult restraints at that point.
Yeah.
So they were trying to get me to rest and lay down so they could check on me. I was breaking adult restraints at the age of 8 because I was so stressed out and scared, and they said, hey, we have to put her in a coma. So they sedated me. My mom prayed with me, and then they sedated me. And when I woke up, this is what is so interesting about the situation. When I woke up, my mom was sitting there, but when I woke up from the coma, because I was in a coma for probably 5 days, I wake up, I look up, I see this lady sitting next to me, and she says, hey, I'm your mom. Like, she had to remind me all of those things, and then at that point, I couldn't speak, I couldn't walk, But
when you saw her, like, did you just not recognize her, or?
Not at first.
Okay.
Was
it like a blur, or? Because you said that you almost went blind. Was it like you just didn't know who she was because it was just a blur, or you literally?
I had no idea what was going on.
Okay. But you saw her completely.
Yeah, I could see her completely. I didn't know what was going on. Okay. So I'm looking around like, where am I? What's going on? Who is this? And then she's like, hey, I'm your mom. Do you know what happened? And I'm like, no, I don't know. So she gave me a brief description. And then she didn't tell me that the doctors told them I might be blind. Yeah. Because both eyes, I had 2 black eyes for almost 6 months as my eyes and everything healed up. So she had me cover up my eyes one at a time because that was her first concern. Right. And I could see fine out of them. So
I'm just intrigued by that part. Like, but can you clarify? I just want to know for myself. When you saw her, you didn't recognize her?
I don't really think I did. If I'm going to be honest, I don't know that I really recognized her. Yeah. I think once she said it, you know, like when you wake up from a deep sleep and you don't really know what's going on?
Okay.
Kind of thing. So,
right. Well, like, I've had that where it's like you're in a deep sleep, and then there's been times where I was sleeping so good, and I wake up, and I didn't even know where I was at. I thought I was staying the night at one of my friends' places or something, but I'm like, you know, but I'm at my house.
Right. So that's kind of how it was. Like, I wake up from this very deep sleep. I'm looking around. I'm like, who is that? What's going on? Where am I?
I got you.
And then things started coming back. And I could start remembering, like, oh, yeah, that is my mom.
Right.
Okay, I'm in a hospital. I don't know what's going on, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Okay.
At the very beginning, as soon as I wake up and I look around, I'm like, who is that?
Who the heck? Yeah, right.
I never told anybody that either. Like,
you probably could have woke up in the wrong family.
Exactly.
Right.
Except I look too much like my parents, so.
That's conspiracy theories right there. You know, you could have been the aliens that everyone's looking for. All right. So, okay, continue.
Okay, so we moved to Arizona. I ended up only being in the hospital for a couple weeks. The healing happened really fast as far as being able to go through rehab, walk. Everything checked out. They checked my brain, they checked my eyes, my ears. Everything was fine. They made sure they checked my swallowing. Everything that I needed to do, everything checked out fine.
Yeah. Did that have any long-term effects on you?
Memory, there were, I think, forming new memories was a challenge.
Yeah.
So that had a long-term effect. They had put, this is conspiracy, but they had to put a tube in my throat for either eating or breathing. I'm not sure which one. I believe it was for breathing. Because once I woke up and I was breathing normal, they took it out.
Wow.
So they had to put a breathing tube in my throat, and there are times that when I'm very tired, there's still a scratchy sound in my throat. Mm. And it's believed that that's probably due to the tube being in my throat and my throat not properly healing from it.
Okay. All right, well, we'll move on from the craziness of that.
Okay. Anyways, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, long-term effects. So my eyes...
No, not the long-term effects.
Oh. Otherwise, I don't have any.
Yeah. Okay. So after that accident had happened, what was life like after that? Moving on,
a couple weeks later, after I got out of the hospital, the whole family moved to Arizona. And then, so that was about mid-August. And I could go on all day about my childhood. Do you want me to go on all day about my childhood? Or give you a brief description?
No, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I mean, I just want to pick your what your childhood was like. You don't got to tell me every specific detail of your life, but you know what your childhood was like, and then because I want to get to eventually picking your brain on your philosophy of life and your theology or just the stuff that you believe. So, like when you were a child, when you were growing up, did you get taught the Bible, or you grew up in a pastor's home? What was that like? Were they teaching you what to believe, or how'd that play out?
So, it was a little of them teaching me and them wanting me to learn for myself. Yeah. So we would be instructed, me and my siblings. I'll just talk about me. I'll leave my siblings out of it. It's like whenever I say just me, it sounds like I'm the only child or something. I'm like, no, there's a lot more.
Whatever you want. Yeah, go ahead.
But they had us reading our Bible every day. It was just a part of our routine was to read our Bible every day. We were taught to pray, and not any specific wordings or anything. You kind of pray as you believe you should pray. Yeah. Or pray whatever you believe you should pray about. And sometimes they'd give us suggestions like, hey, the crime rate has gone up in this location, you should be praying that God helps the detectives, the police officers, whoever, to be able to find them and that the crime rates go back down. So they'll kind of give us suggestions like that on what we can pray about, but it's not like we're reciting the Lord's Prayer every day.
I got you.
And then we would read the Bible every day. There would be no days, like, it was just part of our schedule. In you eat lunch, you go read your Bible. Like, that's what you have to do. And it would be for a set amount of time. And every book that we had in the house had to be some form of, I don't want to say religious, but it was religious in some way.
Yeah.
Every book.
Like Christian books.
Yeah, it was Christian books.
Okay.
So you're not just reading a novel. You're not just reading some random book about anything. It needed to say something about, it had to have Christianity kind of woven into it in some way.
Wow.
So we had that. So it was a very Christ-centered type of upbringing.
Yeah.
And then...
What was that like, though, for you? Like, when you were a kid and everything was, Christianity, read the Bible, and Christian books, pray. Like, it's Jesus all day, right?
Right, all day.
What was that like in your head? At that time, how old were you? Or between that time frame?
This was birth to 18.
Wow. So, did you like it? Was it something, was religion something that you were intrigued by? Or maybe it wasn't because you were raised in it, so it was just normal. But wait, was there ever times where you were just by yourself and you were just like, did you always believe in God?
Yes, I always believed in God. I would question the foundational beliefs of, like, the specifics of what I was taught. Because, I would read the Bible on my own, and then I'd be like, hey, Dad, I heard this, like, in a book that I read, or maybe a sermon, but I read this in the Bible. How do we make that work if they're saying two different things?
Yeah, little contradictions and stuff.
Yeah, these little contradictions that I would try to understand. But it was, to me, it was just normal. It was just normal stuff.
Yeah.
So what was interesting was once I turned 18 and I had my own job, that's when I started, like, that was strange for me. It was like a shock, a culture shock.
Really?
Because...
What was a culture shock about it?
I grew up in a very sheltered type of environment, and I was always wondering what my friends, because I had friends who lived on the same street as I did and in the same neighborhood, but we didn't spend a ton of time over at their house. It was always at our house, so it still remained a pretty controlled environment of Christianity kind of being the center.
Oh, okay. So when you say culture shock, you're meaning you were hyper sheltered,
right?
And then by the time you went out into the world, what was it? You mean you just saw how different people operated that weren't Christians,
Right.
How people dressed and talked, and was like, are you talking about that type of culture shock?
In a way, the way that people dressed, I didn't care as much because my friends would dress however they wanted to. Like, they would be wearing shorts, tank top, and I grew up wearing long dresses and long skirts and a T-shirt. So that's how I grew up, but everybody around me didn't dress that way.
Okay.
So to me, that was fine. It was when I started off, my first job was in a Christian preschool. But even that was a culture shock because I believed that what I was raised and taught, everybody else needed to believe that and think the same way. So I was taught that I had to, like, put that on everybody else. Preach it to everybody. So, and also I just assumed because it was in a Christian preschool, everybody else thought the same way I did. And so when I'm over here hearing somebody telling me about what happened with their baby daddy and they have a kid, and I'm like trying to figure out how that worked. And they're telling me like all of these stories, or they're cussing. Or
Did you never heard people cuss before, or
I'd heard some cuss words.
okay, but just not like the the degree that people were probably doing it in the workplace,
Right.
in a Christian preschool.
Right.
Okay.
That was very shocking, hearing somebody cuss or somebody talk about what's the word? Talking about
Promiscuity.
yeah, hearing people talk about promiscuity, I'd be like, it was just shocking because that was not what was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And so,
Let me pause you real quick. Now, I've known you for a while now, for years.
yes.
But this is interesting because you've told me your story, but it's fun like picking those specific details. 'Cause I never knew any of this. You grew up in a preacher's home and you weren't really introduced to the real world.
Right.
That's fair to say.
Right. So it was very sheltered, and my parents wanted to make sure that we understood what we believed and what we should believe. And it kept in a way, because it was almost like umbrella type parenting, where they just sheltered everything that we heard, everything that we saw. We weren't even supposed to listen unless it was like from a movie. We couldn't listen to any music unless it was Christian music. So that was something that my friends would be like, "Are you serious?" And I'll even have people say today, they're like, "So you don't know very many of the songs from the 90s?" And I'm like, "Well, I do now."
Yeah.
But I didn't when I was growing up.
How was that for you though, as a kid? Were you intrigued by what other people were doing, or did it frustrate you that you weren't able to explore other things, like music, or you just didn't realize that until you had the culture shock, realizing that there's more out there? What happened?
I felt a little frustrated because
While you were living with your parents?
yes,
Okay.
because I didn't understand why I couldn't listen to other music when I could listen to music from like a Disney movie. I could listen to that song, but I can't listen to anything else.
Yeah.
Or like we could play Disney music all day off of YouTube, but if we pulled up some song like NSYNC from NSYNC or Boys to Men, any of those ones, like no, those were not allowed.
Okay.
So I felt frustrated because I couldn't enjoy exploring other music.
Dude,
And then
I'd be so annoyed if I was listening to Disney music all day. Man, it's already hard for me to watch Disney movies. But listening to Disney music, that's it?
or Christian music, and it needed to be like there would be some songs like we couldn't listen to Skillet.
That's the best. Good.
Toby Mac was pushing it. They weren't sure if Toby Mac was okay, but my youngest brother was so set on he didn't want to just listen to everything, all of the singers that were out when my parents were listening to music as kids. He wanted to listen to more modern music. So
Who?
My youngest brother.
Oh, okay, I got you.
And so he would try to find other people like Skillet or like Toby Mac, where it has a little more drum music to it. That's basically what they didn't like as much.
Right.
So, but
yeah, go ahead.
it was also challenging because I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to do what my parents said and follow the rules. So there were times I would be with people and they would be playing music and I knew it wasn't from a Christian radio station, and I felt so uncomfortable because I'm like, is this a sin? Am I sinning by sitting here and participating? I'm driving and I'm riding in their car. I'm the passenger. They're playing this music. and I'm here listening to it. Is this a sin? Am I sinning?
Yeah.
I was so stressed out. I finally had to say something to them and say, hey, I'm not allowed to listen to this.
How old were you at this point?
I was 15 or 16.
Okay. All right. So you kind of had that little. I went through that same thing around that age. You know, a little bit of a legalistic. You know, you go to church a lot. Start wondering if everything you're doing is a sin. So
Right.
was that stressful for you at all, or you know, because you're hanging out with these people, they're your friends, but did you feel like you just couldn't hang out with them anymore? You had to cut them off because they're listening to certain types of music that you're not allowed to?
I didn't feel like I needed to cut them off. It was more I would get made fun of.
Yeah.
And that made me uncomfortable. And then people didn't want to be around me. So it wasn't me cutting them off. It was them not wanting to be around me because I was being legalistic and saying that I couldn't listen to certain music or I couldn't participate in certain things or I couldn't watch certain movies because this was what my parents had said or this is what I thought that God wanted me to do. So it wasn't so much of me needing to cut people off, but more of that discomfort of knowing that people are going to judge me and treat me whatever way because I was legalistic.
Did your parents ever make you like have to cut people off or out of your life if they weren't Christian? Or were you okay? Was it okay for you to hang out with people who weren't Christian?
It was okay for me to hang out, but they needed to know where I was at all times and what we were doing.
Yeah.
And like I had one friend or a couple of friends. We would go over to their house. I would go over to their house. We'd hang out, but my mom wanted me to check in every 15 minutes.
Right.
Or she'd say, "Hey, make sure that you don't go into the house. Stay outside. You can play in the backyard or the front yard, but don't be staying in the house."
I got you.
So it would be little things like that where she could just make sure that.
Yeah. How do you
everything was
feel
fine.
about that today? Was it a little bit too much, or did you appreciate it? Like, how do you feel about that today, looking back?
Looking back, I think my parents made the right choice. At that time, I was really irritated, though.
I got you.
So, because again, it was kind of embarrassing. Like, sorry, I can't be in your house right now. Like, it felt uncomfortable for me because I'm like, that they would come over to our house. They could hang out at our house all day, and their parents were fine with it, but my parents weren't okay with me being inside of their house.
Right.
So to me, it was uncomfortable then, and I would get irritated at that time, but we just rolled with it because we wanted to hang out and play.
Right. And don't worry about all that noise. I'll edit it. So, okay. I want to go to where you were talking about when you were 18 and you had the culture shock. So, you know, you got into the workplace. And so what was life like after the age of 18? When did you move out of your parents?
When I was 22.
22. So, I mean, if there's anything in between 18 and 22, you could tell me. But I want to know, though, what after you had left your parents' home, you know, and then you moved out, what was life like? But go ahead, share if there's any specific details you need to share, though.
There are a couple of details. Like, between the ages of 18 and 22, I had such a desire to fit in. Because now I was a grown-up, now I could make my own choices, I could do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I had this desire to, like, fit in. And so I would just... I learned how to do whatever I thought people would want me to do or act however people... I thought people wanted me to act so that I could fit in because growing up, I never fit in. So I was trying to make myself fit into whatever that is that I thought they wanted me to be. And at some point as well, when I was 21, I did start college.
Yeah.
I started studying psychology. So those are like the couple of little things. I also... yeah, I think that was it.
Okay. So, in what ways did you feel like you said that you felt like you were trying to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
In what ways were you trying to fit in?
I I would go and see movies I shouldn't go see.
Like what?
I can't remember the name of the movie.
Okay.
But they were movies that were R-rated or whatever that one is above R. Isn't there one that's like more than R?
I don't know.
So I did things like that.
You were watching movies that were beyond rated R? That's bad. You need to repent.
Well, and yeah, that was not very good. That was a dark time.
Okay.
I would also, my parents raised us to not drink. They raised us to never cuss. They raised us to be responsible with what we did in life.
Yeah.
So I kind of went the opposite direction. Once I was 21, I flew out of state to visit my brother so I could get drunk.
Oh my gosh. Look at you backsliding now. You're over there backsliding.
Well, I had convinced myself it's okay. I read the Bible.
Everything your mama taught you, you just went complete opposite. Go ahead.
No, well, because I was a Bible thumper at that time, I was like, well,
Yeah.
there's nothing in the Bible that says you can't drink. It just says don't get drunk.
Don't get drunk. Ah, yeah.
So I did all of this research on how to not get drunk.
Oh my goodness.
But I drank for a whole week. Every day I would drink
Did you get drunk?
a couple times.
Wow. You're going to hell.
Right?
No, I'm kidding.
It was terrible. I shouldn't have done it because then once I moved out of my parents' house, then I was like, I'm drinking. I don't care. I'm going to drink. I tried smoking like one of those old-timey pipes.
Are you talking about like Popeye?
Yeah, like Popeye, like that one.
Where it's kind of curved?
Yeah, like it's got that crazy curve thing. I was like, man, that looks dumb. I don't want to, but...
What was that like? What do they put in that thing?
Just some tobacco, I think.
Oh, just like regular type,
Yeah.
like cigarette type stuff?
Yeah,
I don't
was
smoke,
like...
so I don't know anything about that. So.
I don't either. That was the only time, and I never did it again.
Okay.
Because I tried it. I get nervous. My grandmother had cancer from smoking. So I don't want to have anything to do with smoking because I don't want to end up with cancer.
She died of cancer smoking? Wow.
She smoked most of her life, and then she ended up with cancer because of the smoking, and a few years later, she passed away.
So let me ask you. So you're about to smoke, right?
Uh-huh.
With all this, or drink, whichever one. All this history of going to church and this, that. What's it like the first time you're like bringing it to your mouth, and what was going on in your head where you're just like, did it feel as if you just had made up your mind that you're just going to do it and you didn't feel any guilt?
I felt so much guilt.
As you were doing it, before you did it?
Before I did it, as I was doing it, I was like, I don't think I should be doing this. Like, Is this really right? Is this wrong? And we don't have to get into religion if you don't want to, but I was raised that...
No, let's get into all of it.
It doesn't matter if you do any kind of sin. If you're saved, then you're saved. So to me, I'm like, well...
Once saved, always saved.
Yeah, once saved, always saved. So I was like, well, if I'm drinking and it's a sin, I don't want to be sinning, but there's no long-term consequences from... I mean, there are long-term consequences. But in my head, I was like, nothing's going to happen today if I get a little drunk. And so I was like, whatever. I want to try it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's really not that tasty, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
It's literally, wine is worse than, like, the whiskey or the rum.
The first time I ever drank, I think I was 7 or 8 years old or something, and it was by accident. There's this woman my grandfather was dating, and she, he put the alcohol in a McDonald's cup. I'm thinking that it's Sprite.
Right.
So she says, "Hey, can you go get my drink, go get my soda or whatever?" And I went to go get it, and I went to go take a sip. And then I tasted it was alcohol, and I'm like,
oh,
the heck?
Man.
And then another time, one of my friends, I don't even know what it was, some sort of a shot glass thing, and I was at some sort of a Jewish, like
the
what do you call it?
synagogue?
Passover,
Oh,
and we had to drink something, and I drank it, and it hurt. Whatever it was, it felt like I just drank acid. But I drank by accident, but I know it tastes terrible.
right. It was
But you did it repetitively, so why were you doing it on repeat if you didn't like it?
because I was told it's an acquired taste, and this is what I do to fit in.
Makes sense.
So I needed to do it, and then
It's never mind.
I just had to. This is how you fit in.
But when you think about it, I mean, I know that I'm not judging people who drink. You know, I have friends who drink. I have friends who smoke. But what you just said, that's a very key point right there, where you just felt like you had to fit in, even though you didn't like it.
Right.
That's deep, and I want to get into that.
It actually grew worse because we went to this one Italian restaurant, beautiful. It was in Tennessee, which is like the best place to buy alcohol and get drunk.
Yeah.
So we're in Tennessee. We go to this beautiful restaurant. My brother says, "Bring us the best of the house." I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, whatever. So the guy brings me this beautiful bottle of wine, pours me a cup. I go to take a drink, and I spit it out because it tasted like throw up. It was so gross.
Wine?
It was wine.
Man, I've never had wine.
Yeah. No.
Well, I think for me, it's just the idea of this thing's been sitting here for how long?
Right. Years upon years. I went to a winery. I don't know what they're called. It's a winery. I saw the whole thing on how they make the wine.
And how do they make the wine?
They had the grape vineyards.
Oh, yeah. No, I seen a video. No, go ahead. Go to explain it. Yeah, go ahead.
They had the grape vineyards. They have these giant silos of, I don't know. They crush the grapes. They put it in and just...
big old drum container thing.
Right.
And just let it sit, right?
Right. And they have it dated so that we know how long it's going to sit in there.
Got it dated.
Yeah, so that you know, like, how long, like, oh, yeah, this is the, because maybe you don't know. So people will pull out, like, the wine and be like, this one's from 1968. Like, this one is good because it's from 1968.
1968.
That was such a great year.
Heck no. I'm not drinking no drink from 1968. Man. What the... Look. I didn't mean for us to go down this route talking about this, but people are probably be looking at us crazy like, you guys act like you've never done any of this stuff. And it's like, because I haven't, but dang, from 1968, and they said that's the best one they had?
Well, that's what people will say. I don't know. I don't remember what year they were talking about in this one. Because they'll have, like, at this winery, there's all these, like, rows and rows of different wines that you can taste. And they'll pour you, like, a small amount of wine.
Yeah.
And you taste it, and then their goal is that you will buy your favorite flavor. And then they have, like, the pub mix, so you eat that to help kind of get rid of the flavor, and then you try another drink. And then you just try all the drinks. And I'm like, okay. Some were good, some were not so good.
That's funny.
It was an experience, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, kombucha. I like kombucha, but I know that ain't no...
That's so mild.
That's so mild. That's practically nothing. It's not... How much? 2% alcohol or something?
0.5.
0.5. So, wow. So you felt like you had to do these things to fit in.
Right, because this is how I fit in. This is how I'm going to be accepted. And I always had that desire to just be accepted, to fit in. And I wanted to be like all the cool kids kind of thing.
Yeah. You know, wow, that just intrigues me, man. Like you go down a life path that you don't even want to go down because you want to people to like you.
Right.
Did they end up liking you?
No, it didn't change anything. It just we created memories, but my best memories are when we went hiking through caves, and when we went and viewed lakes and did things like that. Like when we went out into nature, those were better memories than when we were getting drunk. Like,
Yeah, no, I understand. You know, and I want to make this clear too because even though I haven't gone down that path. You know, everyone kind of has their vices. And so I don't judge people who do those things or got into drugs or alcohol because it's I have family and friends who they do these things to cope with things, but it's just intriguing to me that you're trying to do it so that you can fit in. You weren't trying to do it to cope with anything. It's just it's almost like you could have created an addiction because you were trying to fit in.
oh, I did though.
You did. Okay.
Yes. Once I moved out of my parents' house, because anytime I would go to somebody else's house, if I was going to be there for a long time and they had alcohol, I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'm down. Even if it tasted nasty, because some people know how to buy good wine that tastes good. Yeah. Or they'll at least try to convince you that this is the best on the house. So you're like, well, at least it didn't taste as bad as that one I had when I was 21. This one tastes better. So you have those moments, and then I would drink a little bit, and then I'd go home. And
how addicted did you get to it?
I would live the week. So this was once I was 23.
Yeah.
And I had just gotten my own apartment. I said, you know what? It's been a horrible week. I want to quit my job, but I can't quit my job because I just moved out on my own. Life is terrible. My car is having problems. I'm exhausted. I'm stressed out. There's too much drama in my life. So I got some alcohol, and I started making myself alcohol. I would drink over the weekend, and then I would, even on Monday or Tuesday, I'd be like, I just got to make it to this weekend.
Wow.
And then I can drink. Because I couldn't let myself drink during the week because I was like, I got to work tomorrow, but I'd be stressed out. And drinking would help me sleep better. It would help me not feel as stressed. And so, because then I wouldn't really be thinking about my problems.
Right. So you did do it so you could cope for that period of time.
Right.
Wow.
And it would always bother me because my mom would tell me how her grandfather died because he drank too much. Like, he was a drunk. He ended up passing away from that.
Yeah.
And that's why she told us, like, do not drink. My parents never drank. And so, I mean, my dad did when he wasn't little. But, again, it was kind of like your situation. It was an accident.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he's over here drinking all the time. But my brother, when he got me started on drinking alcohol, something he told me was like, look, you cannot drink when you're stressed out. Do not drink to cope. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So I told him, yeah, whatever. And that was part of why he wanted me to come and visit him for my 21st birthday so that he could make sure I knew, here's what your limit is, so that I could know. Like, there was one night he made me as drunk as he could before, like, I was about to throw up. He's like, okay, now you know this is how many drinks you can have before you throw up.
Right.
And when you throw up, that's too much. He's like,
okay.
I don't ever want you to be in a situation where you're out at a bar, you're drinking by yourself, and you get that drunk, because that's when you can get in trouble. Guys will take advantage. Like, he wanted me to be aware.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, yeah.
Wow.
So, but I didn't listen. I never went out to drink. If I drank when I was out with friends, it was at a restaurant or, yeah, those were the only times. I didn't go out to go drinking by myself because I just didn't ever feel safe.
Yeah, no, that what would they call that? Responsible drinking?
I guess
Kinda.
so.
Yeah.
I would buy the alcohol. I had a favorite type of recipe that I liked, and that's what I would just mix the drinks, and I would just drink at home by myself. Because part of it, I felt like I was doing something I shouldn't be doing, but at the same time, I didn't really know what else to do.
Wow. So during, wait, say that last part again. You just said you didn't know what else to do.
Right.
Like,
So I would be, I knew I would drink at home.
yeah.
I would drink, but I would do it at home because I was kind of like, I knew it wasn't what I should be doing.
Yeah.
I knew I shouldn't be
Were you
making
getting like
myself
drunk every night, or
I wanted to.
you
I
just
didn't.
kind of get tipsy a little bit? That's
I would
it.
let myself get tipsy, and then I would fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then
Wow,
I would,
yeah.
because that was my goal. I was like, I just want to sleep. I don't want to.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, it's. Most people got a vice, man. That they're just trying to. They use that thing to deal with life. So at that time, you said that you would go to work and you're stressed out because of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you would drink so you can cope. What was it about work, or was there other things that you felt like you were just drinking it away? What was it? Or the fact that you moved out of your parents' house, or what were you stressing out about?
So there was a lot of family drama going on. Everybody's gossiping about everybody. When I moved out of my parents' house, I moved into my sister's house. There was a lot of stress there. They were going through some stuff, and I was basically becoming the mom for my niece and nephew. Because of the stuff that they were going through, they couldn't really be there emotionally for their kids, or even physically, because of the extent of what they were going through. So I was taking care of that, trying to be emotionally supportive. I didn't know how to listen to somebody without taking on what they were going through in like an emotional way. So then it was like, I also felt stressed out. I also felt angry at somebody, whoever was being talked bad about.
Right.
So I was like, that stress that wasn't even mine would just,
kind
it
of
would just
put
compound.
on you, and you feel like you want to help everyone, but you're going through your own stuff.
Right. And then I'd have people contact me and say, hey, I want to hang out. And then they would tell me the stuff that they were going through as well. And they would tell me about their vices that they were dealing with. And I'm like, I can't help you. Like, I'm sorry. and so I try to be there and just listen and try to talk them through it all. And I'm like, I would go back to like, how, because my instinct is, let me help them. Let me fix it for them. Let me take them out of that situation. Let me do everything and just make everything perfectly perfect for everybody. I think it was kind of a way for me to avoid dealing with my own issues that I needed to deal with. And
you helping other people, felt like you were trying to help other people because it helped you to cope with your own stuff? Is that what you're saying?
No, it helped me ignore my own problems.
It helped you ignore your own problems.
I didn't learn that until a few months ago. But
like recent?
Yeah, I learned that recently, and that's when I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So
How'd you learn that?
I was listening to one of my friends. It had been a week of friends reaching out to me, talking on the phone, family reaching out to me, talking on the phone, and I'm listening to them talk about their problems. And as they're talking about what they're dealing with, I started feeling better about everything I was dealing with. Because I was like, wow, my problems aren't that big of a deal. Like, I don't have nothing. Like, my life is actually golden. My life is perfect now that I've heard everybody else's problems.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have to worry about my problems anymore. I could just help everybody deal with their problems. And then when I start feeling down and out about myself, I can just send them a message, say, hey, how are things going with your ex? Or how are things going with your kids?
Oh, my gosh.
And then I don't have to think about my problems. Oh, what's your housing situation like right now? How's your mom? And I don't have to think about my problems because then I'm thinking about everybody else's.
Wow.
I don't have to think about my life. I don't have to think about getting my life in order because I'm focused on everyone else.
That's deep. Wow. So let's go back to that situation when you said that you were dealing with everyone's problems.
I did that most of my life. That was one of my ways of being able to spend time with people because if I listen to them, then they kind of spend more time with me. And I had this need of wanting people to be with me all the time, or I wanted the attention.
Yeah.
And even though I wasn't being able to express myself, people like to be heard. They like to know they like to know that people care. And I genuinely did care. But it was a technique I learned to be accepted is if I listen to what everybody else says. And I learned in college and with other education how to be a good listener and be that person people always enjoy talking to. And it keeps going back to this desire. I want the attention and I wanted to be accepted.
Yeah. That is mind-blowing, man, because, there's two things I want to extrapolate on. First off, you were talking about how, you did that to cope with your situations. And let me ask you, did you do that because you knew, you shouldn't be drinking and smoking and different things, that's against the religion, so that was your other way of coping? Or was it as a combination of all those things?
I think it was more a combination of all those things.
Okay, so that was just added on top of all the other.
And also, if I listen to people and learn to just ask what's called open-ended questions, where I ask you a question where you have to tell me a long story, then...
Just listening was, relaxing to you?
It wasn't necessarily relaxing, but it got me attention. I was able to spend more time with that person.
I see.
So I would get more attention during that time.
That's so interesting. It's interesting how you noticed that, though. Because most other people would say, no, that's okay. You should just, spend time with people and different things. But you recognize that you were doing even that thing, which is a good thing, to cope.
Right.
It's very intriguing to me.
Because I genuinely did care, and I was able to help people with whatever they were going through. I was basically practicing being a therapist without having the license to be one. And I would listen, and then I learned how to repeat back what the person said to me, but change it just enough where they could hear what they said and be able to solve what they're dealing with on their own. And so it was like therapy. I even had one person who told me, they're like, so my therapist would really like to meet you because she really likes how you talk.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I was like, oh, that's neat. Okay. Never did meet her. But that's how I would do, is I would learn how to communicate in that way.
Right. So, all right. Now, around what time did you... I had a different question I was going to ask you. I think I forgot that. So, right after the time where... when was the ending point when you eventually stopped drinking and smoking and stuff?
It was... The last time I drank was in December 2020.
Okay.
But I didn't get drunk. I just drank a glass of wine. I was hanging out with my brother, and I said, you know what? Again, it was one of those situations where I was like, I don't care. I want to drink. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to drink some wine. And he was shocked because I hadn't drank. He knew I wasn't one to drink. Yeah. So he was like, wait, you're going to drink? And I was like, yeah. And I got a little tipsy. But it's because I hadn't drank in so long. I had lost a lot of weight, so I was what they would call a lightweight at that point. I tried to drink a little bit, and it made me tipsy. Yeah. But that was the last time. But when I really stopped the drinking was probably around October of 2017, I think. I was like 23 and a half. So my drinking phase really didn't last very long. Yeah. Because one day I realized, I was like, this is turning into a really bad habit. And I knew if I'm struggling through the week just to make it to Friday just so I can drink, my weekends. And then I had a friend back with my first job. I would take her to church sometimes. And she would tell me that she wouldn't go to church with me on some certain Sundays because she had drank the night before and she felt guilty.
Right.
She's like, I can't drink Saturday night and then go to church Sunday morning. She's like, that just doesn't feel right. So I took on that way of thinking. So if I drank Saturday night, I'd skip church on Sunday, and then it was just a downhill spiral. And I caught it as it was happening, and I said, no, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
So that ended, I can't even do the math right now.
Right.
It ended in 2017. Towards the end of 2017.
Wow. After you had stopped, you went to college, right?
I was going to college from the age of 21 to 24.
21 to 24. So 21 to 24, you were going to school for what now?
Psychology.
Psychology.
At the beginning, I wasn't sure, and it's why I didn't attend college straight out of high school. Everybody was trying to get me to, except my parents, who were like, no, you need to figure out what you want to do so you don't just waste your time. Because I had siblings who, they went to college, and then they never used their degree.
Yeah.
And so all of the loans they ended up getting wasted all those years, they never used. They've got master's degrees, and they never used it. So I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to find myself in hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and not be doing something I really want to do.
Yeah.
So after a few years, I decided, okay, I'm going to study psychology. And I started off in a community college. And I went for a couple years. I was doing part-time because I was working full-time. And there was one semester I skipped college because I had just gotten a second job because my parents were losing their house. So I got a second job during that semester. And then I dropped a job. That was a mess. So once I was 23, during all of this, I was 22. I had 2 jobs. And then right before school started, and I had just moved in with my sister, I dropped my other job, and I'm working part-time, going to school part-time, trying to figure out how to get my money together so I can get my own place.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So, at this point in your life, what was your relation to religion, God, Christianity up to this point? You know, you're going to college and stuff. Were you still going to church? What was that period?
I was still going to church.
With your family?
No.
Okay.
I quit going to church with my family when I was 18. I decided to go to a different church. I wanted to go do my own thing.
Go do your
Come
own
with
thing.
that rebellious stuff.
Okay.
I wanted to go do my own thing.
But you took that faith along with you.
Right.
Yeah, but you just kind of were going a different route.
Right.
So
I wanted to explore different churches because I had family they became non-denominational. I knew people who they were different beliefs within the Christianity. I was like, well, what is it? What does it mean? What does it look like?
Yeah.
And the worship services would be different. The sermons would be different. So I wanted to explore and figure things out.
Yeah. So, wow. Now, all this is intriguing to me because it's like, you know, I'm seeing this girl who was raised in a pastor's home, and then the lifestyle that most people, I don't know most people, but a lot of people go down, you know, like when I was in school. Even when I was in, I don't know, 6th grade to like 8th grade, people were already doing drugs, already drinking, already sleeping around. You know, you hear rumors and different things. And so a lot of people get into that lifestyle early on, and you weren't really introduced to it till you, I don't know, what was it, 18, you said, when you first got your first job?
Right. That's when I was introduced to it. Everything else was when it came to those things, it was like, no, that's just bad.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it.
But you see where I'm going with this, right? It's almost as if, not everybody, but most people kind of need to go down that path just to get out of it again.
Right,
You know what I'm
go
saying?
through that little phase of rebellion so that they can see and be like, oh, that's why.
That's why we try to
That's-
live this way or not this way, or because you even as a pastor's kid, you were probably taught to stay away from all that stuff,
Right.
but you still were like, I need to try it.
Like, even, there were so many things. My parents taught me a lot of things, and then I wanted to try out my own thing.
Exactly.
And then it turned out, like, I came back later and I'm like, no, Mom, Dad, I think you guys were right about a lot of this stuff with how they raised us.
Yeah. So eventually, you're growing up. Now this is around the time when me and you meet each other, become friends.
Oh, can I backtrack for a second?
Go ahead.
The stuff with the church, because I'm a preacher's kid.
Okay.
I never finished, because now it sounds like my dad's a pastor at this church and I like skipped out on my family kind of thing.
No, okay. Yeah,
So
yeah.
nobody knows what happened. Like, my dad's still preaching is what it sounds like. But that's not the case.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. No, I got you.
So, do you want me to finish that story before we go into you and I meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, we moved to Arizona. My dad started to work on his own church, and we're all working together. It was kind of convenient because there's 13 of us, and we're all working together on building church, inviting people to gatherings. And we started off inside of some school buildings. We'd rent out elementary schools. And at this time, my dad was able to focus completely on just church building and getting to know people, because he doesn't know anybody in Arizona except like this one family that we didn't really know. We just happened to meet. So he's getting to know people. He's getting involved in the government. And he did. He got involved in the government. It took him a while.
Like a job with the government?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
You know Marley Park?
Yeah.
He did the, what is it called? When they do like the little prayer thing.
Oh, like when the police officers get together and stuff, or?
Oh, there were police officers. It was like, when you, they do it over dedication.
Dedication.
He did the dedication service over Marley Park when it became, before it was even built.
Yeah.
The first house was there.
Yeah.
Where you could do a tour and see kind of what the rest of the houses would look like. So the first house was built there. I went with my dad for that. And he was asked,
cool.
because he was part of what was called
At
leadership.
Marley Park?
At Marley Park.
What?
And that's when I was first introduced to that area. And I'm like, dude, this place is so cool.
Yeah.
Very nice houses, beautiful neighborhood. Everything about that area was put together very well. So he helped with that. He did a lot of other things for the West Valley because he was on this group who would help make votes. He met the mayor, the governor at that time. He met the sheriff.
That's so cool.
There were a lot of people he met. It was awesome.
That is.
But he was able to do that because we were getting a lot of support at that time from other churches who would just send us money.
Yeah.
Eventually, it took a while getting into different school buildings and trying to get church started. Nobody was showing up. And we'd have one person for a short time, and then they would stop coming.
Yeah.
And maybe a family would come, and it was just, people would come and go, and there was nothing that would stick. Nobody stayed. So eventually, after several different schools, we tried just meeting at home. That wasn't working, and it was basically just my friends in the neighborhood would show up sometimes. And finally my dad said, hey, look, guys, we need to make money. Churches are no longer sending money because they only agreed for a certain amount of time. So he started looking for jobs at other churches, like what he used to do in the past. And there were things about different churches that he would go to. He's like, I don't agree with what they're saying. I don't agree with their beliefs. And one thing led to another. He ended up getting a job in corporate America. And around this time, he was also ended up with some mental disorders. So things just started going downhill. And that's when we ended up going and visiting different churches around the valley, just trying to find a place we could plug in and be a part of.
Yeah.
And after about 10 years, my dad was offered a job as a pastor. His friend passed away who was a pastor. And my dad was offered a job there. That church never grew. He pastored there for a few years, and then they had to sell the church building because they weren't able to keep it taken care of, and it was getting broken into because it was in a rough neighborhood. Yeah. So I didn't just leave my dad's church to go explore other churches. We were already attending other churches around the valley.
That makes sense.
And I wanted to test, because growing up we would only check out Baptist churches.
Right.
So I was like, I want to see what a non-denominational church is like and just explore around. So that's what I was doing at that time.
Wow. That's amazing. So I was going to ask you about, I want to start getting into your brain now.
Okay.
But I still want to get more of your story.
Okay.
But I kind of know this other part of your story. A lot of the stuff that you talked about, I had no clue about. I literally didn't know. I mean, I knew kind of the highlights, but not all those specific details. But now I know. Now we can really start picking your brain on your philosophy of life, your theology, and all that stuff. But the story leading to that, you know, I remember I met you. You know, we hung out at Barnes & Noble. I talked to you, and our friendship, you know, I was going to church every now and then, but then, so you got these two people who are both believe in God with two different backgrounds, and then when you and I became friends, our minds collided. Would you agree?
Yes, for sure. I was judging a lot.
Yeah.
You'd be like, I would, you would sometimes tell me, like, oh yeah, I didn't go to church today. And I'm like, he's a Christian and he skipped out on church on a Sunday, like at least once a week. Like you don't have to go every day of the week. Like, like, is he backsliding? Yeah. I didn't know. Cause like you told me how growing up, as a teenager, you'd be at church every single day of the week. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, is this guy backsliding? Like, what is going on?
You gotta give me the benefit of the doubt now. Now I every Sunday I got church now.
So. Right. Yeah, no, you're good.
But back in the day, you know, our minds collided, and I like those conversations because this is when you get to. I come from a background where I seen all this other stuff in the world, and I wasn't sheltered. Right. You were sheltered, and when we meet. Can we let's go into that, or is there any other parts of the stories leading up to that?
No, if there are any stories that come up in the midst, I'll just share it.
Well,
but I am gonna say when we first met and were talking, I was diagnosing you. Because I was doing all these classes in psychology, and I'm like, dude, this guy has like the craziest stories. So I was like diagnosing, being like. Wow, okay. This is quite the case. I'm kidding though. Like, I was trying to do that because it helped me feel like it was fun for me.
That's how you were. Yeah.
Right.
That's funny.
But it was fun.
Okay, so now, before I met you, where were you living? Or were you living by yourself at this
I was living by myself.
Okay, so you were living by yourself. And now... Had you ever had anyone else challenge your ideas before?
There were some people, but I was good at arguing or debating. So they would just not talk to me. They would just cut me off. Because I'd be like there's this one person I was talking to, and we were talking about religion. Because I enjoyed debating. I'm like, dude, this is so much fun because I'm right.
Yeah.
So I'm right, and I'm going to prove everybody else wrong. And
I want to go into the debates that we had.
So
Can we? Let's get into that. So
yes,
the
let's
first
go.
time we ever had a real good conversation. I mean, I don't know. Tell me from your memory, from your experience. So now you got all this life happen. You come across someone like me who is challenging your ideas and your beliefs, also believing in God. What was that like for you? What do you remember?
At first, you were wrong, and I would prove it. But then you would ask questions I didn't have an answer to, and that was challenging. And there would be times, and you eventually called me out on it, I would pull out my phone, and I'm Googling the definition of a word, or I'm Googling a Bible verse or something, because I'm like, I know he's wrong. He's wrong.
Yeah.
I need to
What'd
be
you say
right.
I was wrong about?
We debated. There were so many things that we would talk about.
I was wrong, or what was I wrong about? I was wrong about something, or I was wrong in your head.
You were wrong in my head.
Okay, what was it? I'm so curious.
Well, the first thing that we discussed was, what was Jesus' message? What was the gospel? Something like that. And then I was like, what is he like?
Dude,
so
extrapolate it. Tell me. I want to know. Let's get into it.
I was like, well, at that time, I'm
Okay.
like, well, it's you have to ask. Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins. He was raised the third day. You got to ask him into your heart, and then you have eternal life.
Yeah.
That's the gospel. And you're like, no, okay, well, how about, and then it bothered me because you would have me prove it to myself. So you're like, okay, go to Matthew. Go to Matthew chapter, what was it? 4, right?
4 verse 17?
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Matthew 4:17. That's what I was going to say it was. And so
Dang, you remember that conversation.
I'm like, it said, repent for the kingdom of heaven is here. And I'm like, that was what Jesus said. And I'm like, okay. You're like, what does repent mean? I was like I was already taken off guard because I was like, where is he going with this? What does this mean? And this is totally a different way of thinking. And so I'm like, repent means to say you're sorry. I actually said that. I was like, repent means to say you're sorry. And this was all, never mind.
And let me say this real quick. I remember that conversation because I could tell when I would talk to you, and when the conversation of religion would come up, you were like ready to fire.
Right.
And so I knew in my mind, I'm like you said, you like to debate, you're aggressive with it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, well, I knew I can't just fire back.
Right.
I had to ask you questions because I knew you were a logical person. You think you grew up in a Christian, so I knew I just have to get you to see it for yourself and start asking you questions. I knew in my mind that in order to challenge your ideas, I couldn't just quote a verse to you.
Right.
I would have to ask you questions and make you think about what everything that you think you knew. So, anyways, go on ahead.
So, when you asked me the question about repent and what that means, I was like, well, that means you got to say you're sorry. You tell God you're sorry. And that's what, when you repent of something, that's what you're doing. You're saying you're sorry and you're going to do better. And then you had me look up the meaning for the word repent, and it means to change how you think. I was like, what? And so at that point, I was like, okay, maybe this guy knows something I don't know. I was a little humbled at that point.
Just off of that point?
Well, at that point, yeah, because I couldn't deny it. It was there. I'd read that my whole life. So I was like, he's talking about something, and what he's saying actually makes sense. Like anybody else I debate with, I could prove wrong.
Okay.
But I'm like, and I could use the Bible. And it would stress me out because growing up, my parents would always talk about, like, you need to know your Bible. You need to know what you believe, because there's a place in the Bible, I believe it's in Colossians, where Paul is talking about you need to be ready to give a defense for what you believe. You need to be ready. You need to know what you believe. And so I was like, I don't know what I believe now. And I was just...
What else was in that conversation? Or, those conversations? You said you don't know what you believe now.
I don't know what I believe anymore. It was hard.
What other things?
Well, when Jesus is talking about all of his parables, because debating the Bible was a lot of fun. Debating religion was a lot of fun, because it made me really question myself and what I was believing. So we would talk about stories from the Bible, and I would use them as examples to try to get my point across. And I don't remember what I was trying to talk about, but I was trying to prove something right with one of the parables that Jesus had told. And you were like, and you stopped me and you were like, so what are the parables? Like, why are they, what is said at the beginning of every parable? And I'm like, I don't know. Jesus is just telling a story about what heaven is like. And so I really want to say it had something to do with the prodigal son, but I don't remember what exactly we were talking about with the prodigal son. But I was trying to get my point across about something. And you were like, well, every single parable Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is like, and then he would tell the story. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. It's not just let me tell you a story about how I started realizing that these different stories we had read into, like especially growing up, all of these parables, it was like they were interpreted in the wrong way. It wasn't, the kingdom of heaven is like this. It's like it was taken in. I can't give you a specific off the top of my head. Yeah. I can't remember exactly which ones would be changed, but the parables, they would always be taken and changed. And even today, when I go to a church or somebody's speaking on the parables that Jesus taught, it just makes me cringe.
They make the parable mean whatever they needed to mean in those moments.
Right.
Not what it actually means in context.
Right.
And so it's like you can take a parable, one of those analogies, and make it mean something about the end times. And then you can take that same parable and make it mean something about something that applies in your daily life. And that same parable, and then you extrapolate on all those different aspects of a parable. Like, see the mustard seed, see, like, I don't know, you just go into all these, you create all kinds of different doctrines. Because you're reading these stories in the Bible, and you're making them all mean whatever you need them to mean in the moment.
Right.
And so, in those conversations, I'm like, no, not what you taught it. Don't look at what you think it means, or what you were taught that it means. What does it mean in the moment that he said it, in the context that he was saying it, in that moment, not all this other stuff. And so challenging you on that and getting you to see, like, hey, look, it's talking about the kingdom of heaven. But do you remember me asking, what's the kingdom of heaven?
Yes, but I didn't know how to answer that.
Yeah. What do you remember about that?
Yeah.
And let me make something clear. Her whole philosophy of life has changed. Like you went from being a really legalistic person and stressed out, and like, did you question your faith at some point?
A little bit, but it was like, I felt like I was doing something wrong for questioning.
Yeah.
I felt like a sin to question what I believed.
Right. Because, because I remember a point where, you basically thought like everything was a sin.
Yes.
And I came from that a little bit too. you don't feel like you have freedom. It's like you want to follow God and believe in the Bible and different things, but you have this feeling of like I'm stuck, like I'm strapped. I can't make any decisions and stuff. So how did you go from being legalistic to how you are today? Because a lot of people would think like, oh, if you're not legalistic, you know, like then you're on the complete opposite end, and you just are okay with sin and you're okay with anything that goes on. You don't have to repent. It's just once saved, always saved. It's everything's good until you die and go to heaven. You know, as long as you confess Jesus as your Lord and Savior, that's it. You're good. Like, so you have the complete opposite spectrum, but I know you're not on the complete opposite side. So how'd you get from being legalistic to backsliding to like there's balance in the universe?
So it's interesting because I was raised once saved, always saved, but I was scared of doing anything wrong. I didn't know why I was scared because I was like, what's going to happen? Like, I don't know. I knew God wasn't going to throw fire from heaven, but I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And I didn't understand the concept of long-term consequences of choosing to do things that you shouldn't be doing, like engaging in harmful behaviors.
Yeah.
So for me, I went from once saved, always saved to yes, nothing's going to happen, but I cannot do anything that I shouldn't be doing because that's going to be wrong, and I don't want to do anything wrong because I don't know what's going to happen. And then when I went through my rebellious phase, I guess is what we can call it, I stopped caring. I didn't care. I didn't want to care. I didn't want to think about it. And I just wanted to be happy. That was all I wanted, was just be happy. And I was frustrated because I couldn't be perfect. So, but I couldn't accept that being imperfect was fine.
Yeah, no, see, that's what I know. That's what I know about you. Like, you have this, like, you're just trying to be this perfectionist.
And see, I would get bullied about that, though. Like, that was almost like a nickname I had as a kid, was that I was a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And I needed to...
That's such an interesting... Wow.
They would make fun of me because I was trying to always do the right thing.
Yeah.
That's why I lost friends and people didn't want to be around me. Was because I was afraid of doing the wrong thing, but I didn't know what else to do.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. What do you believe today?
I don't know what you mean by that question.
What do you believe? Like, what's your philosophy? What's your theology? You know, what you went from being PK kid, legalistic to what are you now? What do you believe? What do you...
I believe... I am still questioning what I believe. So, okay. But where I'm at right now is...
Just give a straight blunt... Just throw it out there. What do you believe?
I believe that my purpose in being here on Earth, because that's where it stemmed from with where I got to where I'm at, is like I'm here for a reason. And so as I'm discovering that purpose, I'm trying to do my best to live life the right way. Because when it comes to religious beliefs, what I understand is when Jesus is talking about the kingdom of heaven is here on earth where we're at, and it's inside of us, our job is to bring heaven back to earth. And so for me, I'm trying to live my best life, do what God has called me to do. Kind of like back in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, where they are living the way that God called them to. They are living out their purpose with the gifts that they've been given. And that's what my focus is. As far as being legalistic, and I still deal with the thoughts of, oh, you're probably doing something wrong right now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a sin. You just sped 5 over the speed limit.
You want to do the right thing.
I still want to do the right thing, but I'm not making myself stress as much about it.
I get you.
What I see is, in a way, it's like this is almost. I don't see it necessarily as me messing up anymore.
All right, so somebody's thinking of this right now. Do you believe in Jesus?
Yes.
Okay.
But what does that mean? I guess I should paraphrase it with, what does that mean? And do you believe in Jesus?
You're sounding kind of sus right now. Do you believe in Jesus?
I believe that Jesus Christ came to earth.
The Christians are going to be thinking right now, this girl's sus.
I do believe that Jesus Christ came to earth, died on the cross, and was raised on the third day.
Okay,
I believe he did that to cover for our sins.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you bring up the point about the Garden of Eden and like bringing heaven on earth. And so, and you said something about believing that heaven is within you. Where did you get those ideas from?
Jesus talks about it.
Yeah.
In the Bible. So he talks about how the kingdom of heaven is within you. And like what we were saying earlier, when he first started teaching, he said, the kingdom of heaven is here.
Hey, that's true. Now, as far as like, would you call yourself a Christian?
I think that's the best way for people to understand. I don't like putting myself in a specific identity kind of thing of which religion I believe in, but I think Christianity is the closest. Yeah. Because I believe in what the Bible says. I believe about Jesus Christ.
Why would people have a problem with that? Like for example, now think about this. I know what you mean when you say like you don't want to like identify with a particular religion, but you believe in Jesus, right?
Right.
But what is it about not wanting to identify with Christianity? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then why would people have a problem with that? Because you don't want to identify with it. Why do people have a problem with that in your mind?
So your first question of why do I not?
First off, why? How come you don't want to identify with that word?
Because it's very religious. And
in what way? What does that mean? Let me ask you what it means.
So today's churches and today's Christians have a tendency to be very opinionated, very judgmental. It's just I don't think this is going to make much sense, but it's a somewhat emotional environment when you go to church, okay? I don't know, but I don't think people understand whenever I say that.
Wow. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But you go to church and people are there, they're like crying or they're screaming or they're just, it's just a very emotional experience. And then you're singing songs and the songs are just like sad sounding or they're overly excited sounding. So everybody's jumping, like people are standing on pews and jumping around and acting crazy. But then the sermons, and I'm not like speaking specifically on any one pastor, but when I go to church and I'm trying to learn, the sermons are kind of basic and the Bible tends to be misinterpreted, and I think God is misunderstood in the Christian realm, which is why I struggle with identifying as a Christian.
That makes sense.
But it's the best way to be understood because it's just Christianity is a religion, and what I believe in is more of what I think is the way God called us to be and how God designed the world with this concept of a kingdom.
So, can I try to clarify what you mean?
Yes.
Because I understand. You're saying you don't like to identify with God as religious. Like you don't look at him like he's religious. You don't look at Jesus as a religious figure.
Right.
You just use the word kingdom, saying you don't see this as a religion. You see it as a literal government. And you're talking about heaven on earth, right? And you're saying the heaven's within us. I'm reiterating back to you everything that I'm hearing you say.
Uh-huh.
You're saying heaven's within us. Christ said that it's on earth, and you don't see it as a religion. You see it as, I mean, how do you see it?
I see it as more of like a government.
A government.
Where God is the king and we are
Very interesting.
We're like, what's a good word? Like ambassadors. You know how you have people from one kingdom and they will go and visit another kingdom. And we have the kingdom of the earth and we're here to populate and basically take what God's kingdom and how he's shown us his kingdom is like and turn earth into being like one of like his kingdom, but it's on earth.
You having a mindset change on that, like how do you feel with that mindset compared to how you used to feel?
I feel like I have more purpose in life, and I feel more driven with what I'm doing and where I'm going.
So now I want to go deeper on that too, but I got some other things I want to ask you too. So when you're talking about, let me tell you everything that you've said so far. So you went from being legalistic, kind of going into a hedonistic lifestyle just a little bit, to still believing in God, but then you're discovering different things and you're discovering that you have freedom.
Right.
And you, like you said, you don't beat yourself up for like running a red light, but before you used to.
Right. I still try not to run red lights.
Yes. But did you think you were going to go to hell if you ran a red light?
No.
Oh yeah. You believe the once saved always saved. So.
Right, but God was going to be angry. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I felt like, but it was wrong.
I see.
And so I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew something was going to happen.
Isn't that so stressful?
It was extremely stressful. I had a lot of anxiety.
Man.
Because I couldn't live my life. Yeah. I was so stressed out all the time. I didn't know how to live.
Because of religion?
Yes, because of religion.
Gotcha. Now, I want to talk about modern day dating. This is like the big thing to talk about right now. Mm-hmm. You've seen podcasts like Fresh and Fit podcast. You heard of Andrew Tate. About Red Pill, Blue Pill, The Matrix, the book The Rational Male. Mm-hmm. So you look into all these different things, right? And you're learning about like masculinity and femininity and man, I want to get to that, but I'm trying to figure out what route I should go down. Should I talk about that next, or should we continue talking about your theology?
I'm either way. We can come back for a second round if we need to.
All right. Well, okay. Well, we'll go down the dating route. Now, first off, how do you see men?
In general? Like today's men?
We're talking about America.
Okay, America's men?
Yeah, because this is something that I want to ask you, because I would consider you a traditional female, traditional woman, and there's a lot happening in America, and kind of what you brought up about Christianity, saying like when you go to church, it's kind of emotional. It's feminine.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, there's nothing wrong with feminine. Nothing wrong with femininity. But should a man be feminine?
No.
Now, that's why I want to ask you, how do you see men today? In general, men today.
I see men as being in a lot of trouble today. There's a lot of them. Our society is trying to make them change into what they shouldn't be. There's even a book that was written trying to help young men know how to cope and change how they naturally are so that they can handle the way our society has changed. And I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah.
But because there's so much femininity, they are trying to help the men understand, and boys understand, as well as like teachers and parents and just grown-ups in general who may have young men in their lives. The book is designed to help them understand how to help the young men cope and become more feminine. Is literally what it looks like.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say a few terms to you, and I want you to tell me what you think about these terms.
Okay.
I'm going to say alpha male.
Alpha male, that is a man who is confident in who he is. He is masculine, and he tends to demand respect when he walks into a room, but just with his presence. It's not a loud and boisterous way of behaving. It's just calm. He has good self-control, and he generally has his life mostly in order. Like, nobody's perfect, but he's got his life mostly in order.
All right, I'm going to say another word. Another term. Beta. Beta male.
That is a man who is struggling in life. He is not doing anything with his life. He may be an emotional male. Well, he is emotional. And when I say emotional, it's not that he doesn't, like an alpha male doesn't have emotions. An alpha male is able to control his emotions. A beta male does not have any control over his emotions, so he just gives full vent every time he's upset, and he may yell, he may become so upset that he cries, he may become upset and do things that when he's in a logical state with his mind, he wouldn't do. So whenever he's done being emotional and he looks back, he's like, dude, that was kind of beta. If he is giving into everything that the woman says, or he's always apologizing, there's a moment to apologize. Alpha males can apologize. But what I'm saying is, if he's always apologizing just for doing things or for just being himself, and he's actually done nothing wrong, that's beta.
Okay. Wow.
He's also usually sitting on the couch, eating Cheetos and playing video games.
Okay.
He may be in his parents' basement.
playing World of Warcraft. All right.
I'm not hating on video games either.
Yeah,
Guys who play video games, alpha males can play video games.
Yeah. No, I got you.
There's just, you have to find the balance.
Yeah, no, I got you. So, all right. As a woman, I want to know, and please, give me the most honest answer you can give me.
Okay.
I mean, you're already being honest, but this right here, I don't even think I've ever asked you this before, but I want to know. How do you feel as a woman? How do you feel about emotional men? I want an honest, I just want an honest answer on that.
So my thoughts have changed over time.
Okay.
Because it went from 7 years ago, I would think, wow, he's so strong. He's sharing how he feels. He's showing his emotions, because I was taught that men who don't show emotions end up with depression, or some other form of a psychological disorder. Mind you, as I said earlier, growing up, my dad had a psychological disorder. He dealt with depression, bipolar. So for me, I was like, dude, like, men need to, I would talk with my dad, make sure he was always good all the time. And I would try to make sure, like, I would check on my brothers, I would check on my friends, because I believed men needed to talk about their emotions. And that was how they became strong. That was how they learned to not bottle up everything. And that's not actually how it works. Men don't usually like to talk about what they're dealing with in general. So they can handle their emotions on their own. They're not like a woman. Women like to talk about their problems all the time, and they don't, like that's how they deal with what they're dealing with. But men are not the same way. So I used to think men were very strong by sharing their emotions, and then I changed that a little bit over time, and I thought, no, men are really weak if they're showing their emotions.
Pause you real quick. What did you mean earlier when you said you were taught that men should be emotional? Like, who taught you that?
This was in psychology class.
In psychology?
Yes, I took a class called Abnormal Psychology, and I already kind of had this opinion because it was my personal observations of seeing my dad, and then doing my own personal research on what causes depression, what causes bipolar disorder. So I had done my own little bits of research, and then I'm doing this class, and I think I misunderstood what my professor was trying to explain to us, because after years from taking her classes, I started realizing how she would ask these questions that would make us think.
So she said
No, she didn't.
that men should be emotional?
No, she didn't say it.
Okay.
She said something to the lines of men who don't learn how to deal with their emotions.
Oh.
So, but I misinterpreted. I changed it in my head.
Okay, I got you. So in your head, you... Okay.
Right. So...
I'm like, what?
No. But see, that's the funny thing. Like, we have these stories in our head that we look for that confirmation of what we already think, and then, oh, see, the psychology professor said it, so... And it's like, wait, if you actually listen to what the psychology professor said, that's not what she said. So,
that makes sense.
Anyways, that's what I thought at first. And then I changed it to, like, as I'm listening and learning about men, learning about women, I was like, no, men who talk about their emotions, they're weak. They shouldn't talk about their emotions. They shouldn't talk about anything.
You started to shift your like, you started to think that men shouldn't be emotional, right?
Right. Men shouldn't be emotional. They
How old
shouldn't.
were you?
At this point, I was probably around 26, 27.
Okay, I got you.
So we're getting closer into where we're at now. So I started thinking, no, men shouldn't. It's weak if they show any form of emotion. So if a guy was being emotional on a movie or in person or whatever, I kind of judge a little bit, like, dude, like, he needs to get it together. Or I hear a guy talking about his problems, I'm like, man, like, what's wrong with you? Like, just, like, get it together.
Yeah.
And over time, as I continue learning about how our world is and how we've been programmed to think, I don't see it that way anymore. I see it more as an emotional man is trying to figure out his way in the world. And he doesn't, like, today's men are at such a level of frustration because of how they've been taught and how everybody's been taught. I don't see it as weak necessarily, but they do need help in learning to overcome that emotional state, because men are not naturally emotional.
Amazing. So, okay, let me ask you this. Now, this is kind of personal. Be honest. What do you prefer? An emotional man or a non-emotional man?
A non-emotional. Because as a woman, I have such a roller coaster of emotions. If I'm having a moment where I'm emotional, I need somebody who is solid, who is strong, who can kind of be that rock in the midst of my storms. And then if he's staying calm when I'm like stressed out and emotional about whatever it is, whether it's because I just broke my favorite plate or like it could be anything. Like women are quite interesting, but whatever the issue is, like I could have broken my nail, I could have like just been in a car accident, whatever the situation, and I'm emotional and I'm trying to calm myself down. If the man is over here being emotional with me, then I feel like I have to, because I need some calm.
Yeah.
So then I have to be the rock, and that is very hard for the women to do for the man.
Nope. I totally understand that. I get it. I'll say this. I'll say this right now. 'Cause I know a lot of women, they wouldn't say this, but I know that this is what girls are thinking. You tell me if you agree. When a guy is emotional, and like obviously, like you said, yeah, an alpha male, he has emotion. Mom dies, he's probably gonna shed a tear,
Right.
But you shouldn't be crying for more than like a week. Crying.
I'm not gonna put a timetable on that.
Yeah, okay.
But,
We won't put a timetable on it, but you kind of, I'm gonna say this, and you just tell me if this is true or not, or the accuracy. If your man is crying on your shoulder, baby girl, my mama died. Okay, well, mama died. All right, okay, you kind of feel for him. But if he's like crying hysterically and for a long period of time, and maybe not even necessarily a long period of time, maybe even a short period of time. And it doesn't just have to be mom dying. It could be like, I don't know, he loses his job. Let's go with that. He loses his job. And he comes to you crying that he lost his job. That's going to make you feel insecure.
Mm-hmm.
As a girl, your man comes home crying that he lost his job. The other thing is, if he's crying on your shoulder, literally hugging you and crying on your shoulder, or even if he wasn't even doing that, just like all you're thinking as a girl is, come on, man, like let's get it together, man. Like, get another job. What do you? There's no point in you crying. Like if you cry as a good woman, you would prefer him be there for you, but it's harder for you as a woman to be there for a man if he's crying.
Right.
Would you agree?
I think so, yes. Again, it kind of depends on the situation.
And I'm not saying this on you. Yeah, obviously it's situational. I'm not saying that this is what you're like. But I'm just saying in general, as a woman, you're gonna think you would prefer if the man's going through a hard time that he be strong in his own hard time, right?
Yes and no.
Go ahead.
Because in my mind, we're referring to this like if it's my husband, right? And he loses his job. And this was his dream job. Like this is all he ever wanted to do. It's his dream job, and he comes home, he had just gotten fired or let go, or he had to decide that maybe he was running a business and the business just wasn't working out and he'd exhausted every effort. And he comes home and he's crying.
At that point, you would understand.
I understand.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's fine. Now, if he spends every day for 3 weeks crying on my shoulder about this, I'm going to be like, dude, this isn't you. I would find some way to help him figure out how we're going to navigate and improve.
Well, see, because that's because you're a decent individual who, yeah, even when your husband's crying, you're gonna be like, okay, this is kind of beta,
right?
But you're gonna be there for him because you're faithful, and you know
Right.
he's just having a weak moment right now. He's also
Right. But I'm telling you, if it was every day for 3 weeks, then I'd be like, okay,
well,
time
because
to.
a lot of chicks, they're just gonna leave the dude after one day.
Yeah, as soon as he comes home, he's like, dude, I just lost my dream job. And she's like, well, I just lost my weekly hair salon, so I'm out.
No,
Right.
he's gonna say, "Baby girl, I just lost my dream job," and then she's gonna be like, "Oh, well, I just lost my attraction for you."
Right, because she can't spend any of his money. She's like, I can't go get my hair done.
Yeah.
I can't go get my nails done every week. I can't hang out with my girlfriends.
Yeah.
We were supposed to go get drinks tonight, and now we can't. Like, there's all these things that now she can't do because he doesn't have the money to provide for her, which is really messed up.
So you prefer an alpha male?
Yes.
Yeah, like you're willing to help out a guy who's a beta, and like you'll be faithful and stuff, but you prefer an alpha
Right.
because beta is like it's a turnoff if he's emotional and stuff.
Right.
Right.
And I mean, yeah.
And we're not
So-
demonizing emotions. It's
no,
just,
I'm
it's
not
just a fact.
demonizing emotions at all. And I also understand that every man goes through stuff.
Yeah.
So if a man is going through something and it's hard for him, this goes back to the psychology stuff. I don't think men should feel like they have to bottle up everything and never be allowed to talk about it.
No.
Like if he's going through something, I would rather hear what he's going through. But I think that's because I'm at a point where I can listen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stress out or be like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? The whole world is falling apart now. I can listen and know, hey, I can't fix the problem. I can listen, and maybe together we can figure out a solution.
You saying that you can listen, to me it sounds like it's the equivalent of you saying, I'm not judging you.
Yes.
Like, because a lot of guys feel as though they cannot be honest with a woman or tell her what he's going through because they know they're going to be judged.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, you don't want the guy coming home with problems, right?
Right.
I mean, you just tell me. I mean, you don't want him coming home with problems, but
Right, but problems happen.
yeah, it happens. But you want him to be strong enough to be able to handle it on his own.
Right. Ideally, he can like if he's being. I'll explain it this way.
Yeah.
As a woman.
I'm trying to say, I'm asking these questions so my male listeners, the guys that listen, I want them to be able to understand, like, you're like a traditional woman.
Yes.
And even you don't prefer a beta male. Even you don't prefer somebody who's weak and emotional and stuff like that. But you understand that we have emotions as men, and we might have a moment, but there's like kind of like
there is a
levels
preference.
to this game.
Right. There is a preference, and I think it's a natural instinct for women to seek that out.
Yeah.
And looking for an alpha male over a beta male because a woman wants someone she can follow.
We could just end it there. I'm not ending it right now, but I'm just saying, like, if I had to end it right now, that's good. So, man, I kind of want to go more. How much time we got? So, when it comes to red pill, blue pill, all this stuff, and what men are being taught. So, okay, because you got the area where women are saying, they don't want emotional men and different stuff, or not. My bad. And red pill, they're saying that the men are saying that men should not be emotional, and this, that, and the other. And I agree. But then the issue comes is, how do I put this? Men tend to go way too far into trying to be an alpha.
Yes, they do. At least in my observations. They go way too far instead of just to the point where it's like it's like they're being fake. It's like they're trying to put on this fake persona of who they are. It's like, come on, man, that's like you're acting right now.
Yeah,
like
they're not being natural.
Right, it's unnatural. There's a natural way to act, but the thing is men will look up ways, and women do these things too, but men will look up how to be an alpha male, how to be a man who's respected, and what's the checklist? And so they'll check off everything and be like, okay, I have all of these qualities. I'm an alpha male. This is what I have to do.
What would be the checklist?
I have to stand tall. I can't show my emotions. I must be stoic, which means I shouldn't smile. It's kind of what it sounds like. When I see today's red pill men being stoic, they won't smile. They have to be very serious about everything. They have to have a beard. Most of them need beards. You know it's true.
Are you describing me right now? No, I'm kidding.
They have to dress well. Most of them are not allowed to play video games. Or if they do, they don't talk about it. Like, you cannot talk about playing video games.
Gotta have money.
You have to have money.
Status.
You need a good job.
Physical health.
You can't just have physical health. You need to put on a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
You have to be large. You can't be a smaller build and be muscular. You need to, like, really put on a lot of muscle and a lot of weight in the form of muscle so that you can get that respect. And you need to be, they also talk like you need to be tall as well, so that...
Gotta be 6. Yeah, if anything that's not 6 foot and above, you're disqualified.
Right, which is really messed up, but that's how they treat it.
What do you think about, in the red pill, men who talk about having multiple women, multiple wives? If you that checklist that you just named off, if you can get this checklist, you'll be able to attract a ton of women.
Right.
And if you're able to attract a ton of women, well, the woman that you get, women should not be promiscuous. Now follow me now. This is what they say. Women shouldn't be promiscuous. But as a man, once you get to this status, you can go sleep around with as many women as you want. Now, I sound like I'm preaching, but does that not sound contradictory to you? And I want to know your thoughts on this. Is if you're an alpha male, you can sleep with a ton of women because you're capable now, because you're able to attract, because now you're in the top 10%. Mm-hmm. But women should be virgins when they meet you. So does that not sound contradictory where you're saying that, wait, you're the one who's making women promiscuous?
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a dangerous way. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And this is one of those situations, like, okay, maybe you can attract a lot of women, but that doesn't mean you should be sleeping with all of the women that you attract.
What's wrong with that?
Well, at that point, okay, so there's the emotional needs of women. So we could go down that road. Right. Of how it's really not good for the woman to be, the guy sleeps with him a couple times and then he's gone. Like, there's that struggle for the women, getting women pregnant, even though I know there's all these ways that you can avoid getting pregnant, there's that stuff. But at the base of it all,
women need affection.
Right.
And you can't give women affection if you have a ton of them. Because
right.
you can only focus on like one at a time, maybe two, but
right. So you have that issue, and this is just speaking from a practical viewpoint, leaving religion out of it. It's contradictory because if you're telling the woman, don't be sleeping around with a bunch of dudes, like the maximum body count should be 0, or maybe 2.
Like below 5.
Below 5, I think is the number I've heard.
Something like that.
But women should expect men to be at a body count of 50 by the time they're 22, kind of thing. I actually saw that on, I think, Instagram. Women were like, the age of 22, it's okay if the man has slept with like 50 chicks. But the woman isn't supposed to sleep with anybody. Well, we have 50 chicks now who will never be able to get with a guy because they thought that they were sleeping with the one. Or maybe they didn't. Some women just, they think it's cool to sleep around. But I think when you tell the women don't sleep around, but then you are sleeping around and you're sleeping with a girl who is going to go sleep with another guy, like she's looking for love. And again, this is one of those situations where We've been lied to about what love is as well. But it contradicts itself, and it's really causes problems in our society.
Yeah. So, as a beautiful, young, traditional pastor's kid, entrepreneur, I'm just trying to list off all the things that you got, right? These things that you are. How do you feel about promiscuous men?
Like, would I want to be with one, or just in general men who are promiscuous?
Both.
I personally would rather not be with a man who has been promiscuous. I think that shows a level of respect for both himself, and if he ends up being the one that I marry, it shows a respect for me as well, because he's waited. And it also shows, at the deepest core point of it all, it shows a reverence for what he believes, for God, because of what the Bible has taught us. That sounds Bible thumping, but it's... But, like, I can tell you from a non-religious viewpoint, that's what I started with, but then religion also plays a part in it as well. Because there are people who are virgins by choice, or they are not promiscuous because that's the choice they've chosen. And then you have the ones who are not promiscuous because they never tried, or they just couldn't get with anybody. You have both sides. But the ones who are like, oh yeah, I had the opportunity, but I chose not to, I have a lot of respect.
Amazing.
For those people.
Wow. That right there, that's cool. This is going to be some good content. So, all right, we're coming to a close. I want to ask you, how do you feel about America? How do you feel about the government? The current world that we're living in right now? Brief answer. Give me some. I'm putting you on the hot seat right now.
Okay. America, I think, is falling apart. I think the government is... The people inside of the government are doing what they can, what they think is best, that they know how, to try to make America function, but it's not working.
Okay.
And there are people within the government as well who are causing more problems that just makes it harder to solve the issues that we deal with.
All right. How do you feel about aliens? What do you think about aliens? Hot seat right now. We're just hot seat.
They probably exist.
They probably exist. Okay. Donald Trump.
I think he is a very brilliant businessman.
Okay. Joe Biden.
He needs help.
Okay. Andrew Tate.
He is trying to find his way in the world.
Okay. Alex Jones.
He has a very deep voice.
The Illuminati.
But he makes a lot of really good points with the stuff that he has researched and learned. I don't know how much of it is accurate, but he makes a lot of really good points.
Okay.
I find him interesting.
Pearly things.
I'd say similar to Andrew Tate. She's just trying to figure things out. I don't agree with her on a lot of what she says, but she's trying to figure things out.
Okay. Well, I already asked you that. I was going to ask you about beta male, alpha male. But, so, is there anything you'd like to say coming to a close right now? I mean, I'm glad that you came on.
If you want to follow me, you can get me on YouTube at Doozy Talks. Also on my Instagram is Doozy Talks. You can follow me there as well. I really had a great time.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, I didn't. I wasn't sure how long it was gonna go, and obviously we'll probably do more. I'm gonna have a lot more people on the podcast and stuff, but I definitely wanted to give you a chance to get on, and yeah, I had a lot of fun. So subscribe to the Creed Podcast. Follow me on Instagram. Everything at Creed Podcast. And yeah, look, we're living in a world where we need to be able to have these conversations, like good, deep conversations. Let's talk about religion. Let's talk about dating and relationships. Let's talk about government. Let's talk about all these issues. And there's so many things that we could have talked about, but these are the ones that I wanted to know about what you think, because I didn't know every little thing that you thought. I knew a lot of things, but had a lot of fun, guys, and I hope you enjoyed just trying something new, taking a different approach to the whole show, and less preaching at the camera and more conversational type things. And I hope you enjoy this, and please tell me your thoughts. All right, y'all? So cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's grab something to eat.